All right. All right. Tim, did you get started on it or just get it so far?
Baby steps, Andrew.
Well, hey, I'm proud of you for getting it.
Yeah, it's good. It's I've glanced through it, and from what you've said, I'm looking forward to reading it. I'm real excited about it.
Yeah, and ideally we get on John Barros. I'd like to do a webinar with him, so it's a little bit broader even than this, but I did a webinar with him not too long ago, and John is a good friend of Jim's. They worked together at Thrive. He was their first CRO before they sold to Staples, and he became the he started his own sales company and has become the pretty much the who's who of training the global SaaS companies, Salesforce, LinkedIn, Box, Dropbox, you name it. He's trained them and does train them, but he also trains a lot of MSPs still. And so, you know, he really has some talk about phenomenal insights on where sales is today, where it's headed. And so I'd love to get him on as well. I missed last week's. What's the name? Bear with me. Oh, the book, Steve. It's called The Challenge. It's called Challenger Sales. And I'll try and get you a URL in there while Chip, I'll ask Chip and Ryan, or if you have it. That's great. Okay, so Chip, anything new going on in the dev side or anything interesting you want to share? Any feedback you've gotten? Always love learning from you and hearing from you.
Well, there's always lots and lots of feedback, that's for sure. We did a minor release earlier this week that fixed a couple of things, or changed, I should say, enhancements in the PSA tools arena. We modified the way that contacts can get mapped, tickets can get mapped directly to customers in some of the PSAs, and we made some changes to ConnectWise Automate to make that easier for people who use static IP binding on their ConnectWise stuff.
Chip, you mind if I jump in there real quick?
Yeah, go right ahead, Adam.
Yep. So the changes on the PSA contact mapping is actually to remove the requirement that it happens. When I first designed it, I thought I was a genius, and I had it map the contact to the ticket on creation. We had a lot of partners that were getting end users that were getting emails noticed that a new ticket was open. So this feature allows you to turn that off so that the contacts actually don't map to the ticket and those notifications don't go out. So that's actually what we released this week.
Very cool.
Thanks, Adam. There's a couple things coming down the pike near term that I think we want to give everyone a heads up about. Some of you on this call might know, maybe not all, that SaaS Alerts is moving beyond SOC 2 as our audit standard to ISO 27001. And one of the requirements that has fallen out of that is we have to revert back to an old practice that many of our partners asked us to stop, which is having a session timeout on our products. So, you know, when we first launched SaaS Alerts, if you walked away from your screen or didn't interact with the UI for 15 minutes, it would automatically time out. And people jumped up and down and screamed and basically said, why can't you be more like Microsoft and just let us stay in there forever, like days at a time once we log in? And our auditors are kind of climbing up our neck about that. So you're going to see a change in the coming weeks that's going to return the timeout in both the Reports UI and the Manage UI. And it's not something that we can be compromising about at our stage of development and the way our product is built. It's a necessary element as far as our auditors are concerned. Another big change we're going to be pushing is the user interface at the current sign in or sign up page. So that's going to change around pretty significantly. We've had ongoing support tickets that could get open just about every single week, actually absolutely every single week, almost daily. and it's usually from newer MSPs, so not mostly folks that are on this call, I don't think, but when they add additional MSP users, they're forgetting the step of asking or telling or requiring that MSP user invitee that they have to go to their email and select the email link to confirm the registration before trying to sign in. So they're going to jump in right to the front page of the Manage app. They're going to try and sign in, and that locks their account, and it locks it in such a way that it requires an intervention from our support team. So we're going to be changing that sign-in screen to try and make all of that more obvious. So those are just kind of some little things coming down the pike. And then I actually have one that came up today. It's an enhancement request from a partner that came through our support group. And I actually want to get an opinion from, everyone who regularly participates in this call about the enhancement request. Can you guys still hear me?
We can hear you. You're frozen,
Great,
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
So the lay of the land on that is as follows. When we first conceived of SaaS Alerts, a lot of the things that we did, the choices that we made by trying to project ourselves into the time in our careers when we were actively MSP.
I just lost your audio.
Yeah. Chip, maybe go video free just for a little bit for bandwidth.
My back on audio, guys?
Yeah,
Yes,
your
you are.
audio is fine. Yeah.
Yeah, we're having bandwidth problems here today, so I'm going to drop video, but
Yeah.
I'm actually dialed in on audio. So
Perfect.
to speed this up a little bit, when you see any kind of event in SaaS Alerts that includes file information, you'll notice that we include file names, but we never include the entire path to the file. And we did that because as we were thinking about it as MSP owners, we said, well, if I own this MSP, I wouldn't want an easy clickable file path for a level 1 technician to go in and snoop around into somebody else's documents. So that's the reason that we made that choice. We obfuscate the file path. Now, we've had a request, an enhancement request from a partner, which is, I think, a very interesting use case. They would like to be able to whitelist specific SharePoint and or OneDrive directories and have them excluded from file activity alerts. So projected use case might be that the customer being covered is, let's say they're a marketing firm and they have an entire directory of stuff on SharePoint that they want to have anonymously shared and globally available to anyone in the world. The way SaaS Alerts is constructed today, that's likely going, it's not likely, it is going to throw alert events when those files are accessed from unapproved locations, from anonymous users in unapproved locations. So we can see the value of the use case, but in order for us to do that, we would have to begin storing all of the path information as well as just the file name. Does everybody understand what I'm driving at?
Just get a yes or no, a Y or N in chat real quick. Yep, everybody's got
I
it.
see a lot of yeses. So
Yep.
what I'm interested in is, was our first assumption about making sure that we don't present full path names anywhere in SaaS Alerts or in tickets or anywhere else in the product. Was that a valid choice? And should we consider changing it in order to enhance functionality around being able to whitelist specific directories that are in SharePoint or OneDrive or Dropbox or Google Drive? Any of the products that we cover for Salesforce also has drive storage. So there you go. So there's an opening topic, Andrew, for the floor. If you'll indulge maybe 5 minutes of discussion.
Yeah, I think it's a great.
I see Gary's raised his hand.
Yeah, I think it's a great one. Before we jump there, Gary, can I just close something on default timeout that Tim asked? Tim says or asks, can you set a timeout as a default and then we can assume the risk of changing it if we decide to?
I would love to do that, but our ISO auditors would never let us get away with it.
Got it. And Chip, before we go to Gary, because Gary has great wisdom and I want to hear him. What drove ISO? Just curious. That's really cool that you guys are doing it.
You know, there's an alphabet soup of standards out there.
Sure.
Compliance standards, but I've always believed, you know, since all the way back in the early days of my last company where we went to a SaaS 70, this was before SOC was the standard, and we used COBIT as our underlying standard for the requirements for our SaaS 70, and we've always followed through using COBIT because it's a more generic standard, right? It doesn't just look at HIPAA or NIST or CMMA or CMMC. ISO to me is the underlying gold standard of all of it. It has the most stringent requirements for any information systems processor or information security entity. So I think, you know, for companies that can achieve it, I think it's the highest possible standard that you can push toward in achieving validation that you're running a tight ship from a security standpoint. And we feel we need to do that with our software. So that's why we're pursuing ISO.
Last thing I'll say is I'd love your opinion. We don't have to do it right now, but I'd love your opinion on BSIM, you know, because so few of the, at least MSP vendors out there are doing anything. I think Brian Weeks and now Enable are the, you know, when you had Datto, really the only two that I know that are, you know, looking at a standard around AppSec and, you know, and so on a different call, I'd love your opinion on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So Gary, let's start off with you on.
Yes. So going back to the earlier days, the file paths were one of the things that I actually complained about, saying, you know, if I see this alert, you know, it takes a whole lot more time to go start doing a search in SharePoint, trying to figure out what the file is. And God forbid there be the same file name in multiple paths and different folders. Like in our case, we have that regularly, like with our, you know, our own company, because, you know, under our client structure, we have, you know, similarly named stuff. So I'm honestly not concerned about my guys going snooping. They can do that all they want. They've got those permissions and abilities. I don't care if you don't make it clickable to make it easy for them, but I am definitely in favor of that path.
Okay. Thanks for that feedback. Other voices?
Bueller?
I actually really like getting the entire path in there. I mean, that'd be great. Also, a level 1 tech, I don't know how another MSP is setting it up, but they shouldn't be able to access whatever that file path is in someone's OneDrive or SharePoint without getting the proper permissions from a higher level tech. So am I missing
Well, if they
something
have
there?
access to and either a CSP admin account or a global admin account for that.
Well, I guess
then
that's the real thing, that a level 1 tech shouldn't have a global admin permission into the tenant. You know, you really got to look more back into least privilege and lock down your MSP a little bit more.
Well, that also depends on the size of the MSP.
Yeah.
You know, like in our case where, you know, we don't have a lot of technicians, they do everything from level 1, 2, and 3. So I don't have that luxury of segregating that access.
Right. So then, I mean, no matter what, they can still get to the link. They can get to where they need to go to. It's just whether they have to search and go crazy with it and go to the audit logs and find exactly what was done, or if it's just one-click access. So either way, they'll have access.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Anybody else?
So in chat, Carlos said he'd love the full path. But Ed, I'm just wondering, can you share what happened with your client there and how you feel about the noise?
Yeah, they were sort of reviewing the reports, and it just showed a ton of activity, but it was kind of like white noise. So they were saying, what does that mean? How do we, you know, who's accessing what? And it was just it was overly generic. So we had to explain, like, And it doesn't allow us to say, okay, these folders are going to be accessed quite a bit during the first week of the month. So, don't throw alerts on these directories for this time period. So it's not only whitelisting from a standpoint of here's the directories, it would be, hey, during the first week of the month, there's a lot of movement, a lot of changes, onboarding happens during that time. Don't report on these, or quiet the alert and do it as a FYI. It's not something that, they're leaving the company or they're trying to steal data.
Well, but to that point, we have certain folders like in our accounting area where, where we upload our receipts and invoices, that, we get a lot of that noise. And no, I haven't gone and suppressed them. And I know there are some tweaks I can make, but I'm less concerned about uploads because that's most of what we're doing, but still to see them and downloads.
Hey, sorry about that.
No, all good. Yeah, just
Oh, you're kidding me, really? Wow, so you obviously had a good grasp of it, huh?
Want to mute there?
Hey, Michelle, I think you want to mute Steve.
It might get good. Wait. All right.
Well, it's not. I was going to say it does sound like this could get juicy. Could we?
I was like, well, let's see. Let's just give it a minute.
I like everybody was quiet just in case it did get good. Just for
Yeah. Did you have that sense, Bob, that this something was like?
I was like,
really
hang on, one more second.
Now I'm disappointed. For me, uploads are less of a concern. People uploading data into our tenant versus the downloads.
Unless, of course, it's malware.
I've got backups. Who cares?
Wow.
All right. So yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I think we're getting we have certainly a sample of enough of a sample of this group that I think everyone's in favor. So I'll ask real quickly, if anyone thinks this is a terrible idea, just in chat, say terrible idea. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that we have almost universal agreement on this call that this is one of those areas that we overshot the mark in our own paranoia, and we can probably create better functionality by providing the whole path and allowing you guys to whitelist on a customer by customer basis, obviously individual folders that they would want to work with.
Very cool. So
bypass, I think, is the term we'll use, so it's not confused with geographic whitelisting, because we're talking about bypassing certain types of alert events on specific folders. Okay.
Love it.
That's it, Andrew. Back to regular business.
No, that was very much regular business. That was great business. Ryan, how about in your world? Any interesting calls? Anything you want to cover?
No, kind of echoing last week, we've seen a lot of growth in our incumbent book of business. And if you haven't heard from your account manager, you very likely will in the near future, just to get a better understanding of how you guys are looking at deployment strategies, how you guys are positioning, and anything that we can do to help. So I know you get some emails from SaaS Alerts from the marketing side, and you get some specifically from Alex and Connor. I would urge you guys, when you see them come from them, they will never email you for something that isn't worth your attention. So take the time to open them and see if there's anything that we can do to assist.
Excellent. Okay, Ed, I loved your comment in essence about, because it was reporting related. If I understood correctly, right? There was reports, your clients were kind of confused by them. Do I have that correct, Ed? Paraphrasing you, but when you came
that's correct. They want to know what are actionable items versus what's just general info.
And was this a co-managed customer, Ed? Just when I hear they want to know what's actionable.
Well, they have an ops manager.
Okay.
That she's responsible for account management.
Okay.
Or onboarding, offboarding clients, and they didn't understand what the significance of all of these medium alerts are.
Okay. Okay, so you kind of are setting, like literally teeing up today's conversation. And again, this has been great so far. I hope we remain as interactive as we have been. And so like in the light, we've talked challenger sale, right? To provide insights to customers, to make them look at things differently, right? Ideally, from a perspective that they actually might even be a little bit challenged in their way of thinking. I wanted to open this up to reporting. And Michelle, can we start off with a poll as we set the stage here? I'm really curious from all of you about reporting. I think, you know, if you take a step back and you think about a product that you have, fair to say that you want to know, can you generate value in a report, right? What do I give a client, right? If I have a VCIO meeting, what can I extract, right? To do one of two things, I think, which is either see things differently or use as justification to spend. But I'd really love, you know, your perspective on what the results are. Are people answering that away for us, Michelle?
They are.
I actually agree with the text. I actually want to do both because it depends on the client, and some reports are more meaningful than others. But you know, so there's something in between. It's not black and white.
Okay, well, good. Everybody's saying both, or not everybody, but Eric's saying both, Ted's saying both. It depends on the client. Okay, fair enough. What are our results so far, or what are the results?
So far, well, let's see. So far, we've got 65% see things differently, 35% use just for justification of monthly spend.
Okay.
There's still some people filling it out, but I don't think it's going to change much.
Perfect. So how about this? Who would like to start off? I'm just curious. Give examples of see things differently. And I'd love to know what reports, like, do you guys love? And when I say quote unquote love, like where do you like, man, this makes a difference. It makes a difference, and why it makes a difference. I just would love anybody open to kind of talking about a report. It doesn't have to be SaaS Alerts product, although we are going to ask about reporting in SaaS Alerts eventually. And then we'll actually at the end show a really interesting thing that Michelle put together with the help of me and Chip, mainly Chip. But anyway, who'd love to give a go of something that you really find value in? From
Hey Andrew, we do a lot of VCIO meetings with what's going on with the industry, and then when we can pull up reports about what's actually going on with their organization, it brings it home.
Can you give it that? And that's fair, Eric, but to put you on the spot a little bit more, right? Like, does it do something, right? Like, in other words, think about maybe an example or two, and you don't have to give it the second if you want to think about it, where you're like, here's data, we're VCIO is sitting down. Is it just interesting? Like, and hear me out, right? Because again, think challenger, right? Knowledge. Or is something happening as a result? Like, oh, that's an interesting insight. Or is some action occurring? Is behavior changing? Is buying behavior changing? Is security behavior changing? Or is it?
My experience is absolutely changing because
what's changing?
It is absolutely, buying behavior is changing.
Okay.
Right? Now it's not, a lot of people live in denial of, oh, it's not going to happen to me.
Right.
And all of a sudden, well, yes, it is happening to you. And it helps them understand the need for getting some action done.
Could you have an example or two where you've seen it, and what was the data set, if you will, kind of, and again, genre wise, no, animals are allowed.
We've brought up some 365 reports on hacking attempts or brute force logins and things like that. And so once we kind of expose them to what's actually going on with their tenant, then we can say, okay, now we can bring in, a solution like SaaS Alerts that will at least alert us to it in a better way, and also maybe do some automated remediations. And so they're seeing that there is a solution or pathway to mitigate that risk after they've understood that it's actually happening.
So were they SaaS Alerts reports, or because I heard you said get SaaS Alerts in, where if
Well,
not?
before we've actually sold the solution, right? We need to kind of justify or get them past the denial. And so we can come in with evidence saying, yeah, you think you're not a target, but here actually you are. And once that happens, it moves them past the denial stage.
Got it. So you're layering, you might have them on a trial of it, if you will, and then bring the data.
Not really. We'll go through the actual logs of the tenant, right, from Microsoft, and show them what's actually happening, and that here's the solution that we can use, you know, to utilize this information because it's not currently being monitored, activated, or acted upon.
Got it. I'm just curious, does it take your guys a fair amount of any amount of time to go through those logs from Microsoft? Or
well, we generally do those before VCIO meetings if the client isn't paying for that service yet. So we can talk to them intelligently about what's going on and what we think that they should be doing. You know, once they're on the solution, right? The integration with tickets and that type of integrations, we can easily generate reports every month, and the TAMs can review it with them every single week when they go on site.
Got it. Very cool. Anyone else?
It's all about building the process around it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
The example I would have would not be SaaS Alerts, but I mean, we use several products and they all produce different types of reports, right? And it always depends on who it is we're talking to. And like if we're talking to the executives, it's always good when we break out the, you know, what I call the face slap report, which is basically vulnerability. We do a lot of monthly vulnerability scans as a subscription, right? You know, for some companies, showing them that report card that narrows it all down to A or F. For some reason, everyone's been PTSD about their grades in, you know, middle school and high school and college. So when you put something in front of them that kind of measures things in, well, this is an A and this is an F, it actually does elicit a response, you know, more so than, you know, something that might have some, you know, numbers associated with it. So that for those type of individuals, you know, and we use a lot of color, reds and greens, because that elicits a response on that level. But when you get down into the technical wheels for people who are really hands-on, you know, we route a lot of logs and things through Elastic. We use Elastic and they use with Kibana to do dashboards for them. And the first time they actually see like their Active Directory dashboard and the amount of movement that's going on between individuals and groups and their privileges, and they start noticing that they don't really have their roles and responsibilities defined well, you know, and it starts, and we're able to allow them to create alerts off of that and put it into their system. We could put it into our SIM and SOAR, right, and create a case on it once they're kind of disciplined. But before they're disciplined, it's really interesting to put that kind of dashboard in front of them where they actually see it day to day, real time, what's going on. And I've not been in a meeting yet where their jaw doesn't hit the floor going, I didn't realize we had all this movement going on, because those are Active Directory and how those things all work together. People don't spend a lot of time in those logs in some cases, and you really have to configure them to give you a lot of detail so that you can actually use that to draw operational conclusions about it. And it's not really something everybody has a lot of experience with. So the first time you do that and they put it in a dashboard and they can really see trends real time, it just blows them away, right? Because they never really realize how much activity goes on at that level. It's the same with walking them through their, their malware antivirus portals and saying, look, this is how many times rules fired, in the process of protecting yourself. So the same thing Eric was talking about related to the email and how many emails were blocked and all that. I mean, anytime you can kind of show them the real-time telemetry, the executives may not get it, but they like the big report card that's, yes or no, A or F. But when you get down in the wheels, then granularity matters.
Bob, quick question, because it's interesting. So Eric was talking before you about Bruce, several things, but brute force attempts, lack of MFA, GO. I'm curious with the vols and, the grades. Obviously, you could say, wow, look, you have all these vulnerabilities, but are there actions coming out of two-part question? If there are actions, I'd love you to explain what they are.
Right.
And just curious, because you brought up vulnerability management, which is I find a fascinating topic. And here's why. Because every organization has a ton of them, and most organizations don't have a policy, and most organizations do not understand the difference between things like CVSS, EPSS, and what's being actively exploited. So I say all that to say, what's the end result? What's the movement, if we were to boil it down in layman's terms, of what happens?
Yeah, so this report that they're looking at, the grades are basically created from the vulnerabilities and how they measure against the NIST framework, right? And where they fall into that framework, and what size vulnerability are and how that's weighted. And that has bearing on the grade that shows up for the executive summary. But as part of that report, in the detail part, they're actually, here's where this is occurring, here's the error that exists, here's what you need to do to solve it. It literally spells out to them what the next action needs to be to resolve that vulnerability in their network. It doesn't just point at it and say, hey, that's ugly. It says, no, this is ugly. Here's where that's at and why it's ugly. And here are the next physical steps you need to take to remove that. Like if it's an open port, or if it's, like you said, they don't typically have a policy. So we use this to get their attention. The next thing that comes from that, though, typically is, okay, look, you cannot manage it if you can't measure it, right? So you have to be able to measure these things to know if you're improving your security posture. And the only way to do that is to take a look at that on a regular basis. That's what I was talking about. We do these monthly subscriptions now where we run that. We have executive business review with them, and we show the progress month to month and quarter over quarter as they start mitigating these risks across the whole ecosystem of the enterprise.
What's the business outcome for you guys, though? Are you signing them up, for example, for vulnerability doing remediation of their vulnerabilities on an ongoing basis? Is that the goal? Like, I'm just trying to understand, what's the goal for you guys?
Right. Now, in some of for the most part, we clearly do it because we get pulled through. In a lot of cases, we wanted doing managed services on certain devices because they don't have the staff to keep that up to begin with. And that's what really triggered the vulnerability, was that they just didn't have the ability to keep up with keeping those things current. So we'll get managed services off of that. In some cases, we get professional services to help them create the system that they can use to continue tracking it and improving it. In some cases, it's the impetus for them to put budget aside so that we will get the work to, maybe deploy MFA in a more cohesive manner, a more complete manner than sometimes they do it and it's only a subset of what they really need to do it for. And they check that box off in their head saying, yeah, we're covered. We got MFA. No, you got MFA on a very small subset. That's not covering your entire enterprise. And so we'll get pulled through on that. So it's a twofold value for us. We just want to point out where they have vulnerabilities in the network. And we're not doing this. We'll go in and do a summary version of this for a new customer just to kind of start the conversation. But it is all built around, predicated on that we always get pulled through when we get in there and do a good job of explaining why these things are like they are and how they can fix them really quickly. It almost always gives us pull through. And it just, again, we all have to show the ongoing value of our relationship with them. And it gets us in strategic discussions with them. It opens the door for those strategic discussions, right? Because now it's like, okay, you got some end of life equipment coming. Have you really thought about how you're going to get this out and when you're going to get it out, so that you're not staring down the barrel of a problem here and there? And it really gets us into much more extensive strategic discussions with the users, and again, we're there as a managed service provider to either do it for them, but if it's not our core competency, then we will help find them the best solution provider for that particular thing, right? Because it's all about the partnership we're trying to build with them.
Sure. Who else? That was good. That was great, Bob. I appreciate it. I like, what I'm starting to do is develop trends here. Like, we were going from, we obviously are seeing trends in things that are detected so far, or identified, if you will, from a vulnerability perspective. Any others want to share some stories of reporting that has made an impact in your business? Love to hear some more. Going once? Come on. There's got to be somebody that's got VCIO practices or VCISO practices that's actually doing this. No?
I'll go, Andrew. This is Frank.
Awesome, Frank. Thanks.
Hey, first time, long time.
Good to see you.
Everybody.
Good.
it's rather dark because we're in whiteout conditions, so I've got all the blinds drawn, otherwise you'll be blind. So we had a client engage us to clean up their ERP environment and front end process, and they had a 40% data duplication issue. So before we clean this up, we're gonna make sure that everybody who's got keys to the castle should have those keys. And we deployed SaaS Alerts into the environment. The first week we had some interesting hits, mainly because I forgot to whitelist the US. So Wisconsin showed up as a threat. And I said, you know, while they have goofy accents, they are still part of the states. Can we fix that? So once we fixed it, we had some hits from China, and they had thought they'd secured their environment to the point where nothing outside the US could access data. So when I presented this to the group, I said, you know, do you have any users in China? And they said, can we see who sent what? We drilled down into the logs and saw the user pop up with some folders she'd made public in OneDrive and had emailed off. And one of the guys in IT said, we've suspected her of being a Chinese spy. I thought they were joking, but it's a legitimate concern in the business. So ran it past Andrew and Chip, and nope, it's legit. They weren't just sending stuff up to a balloon. We found somebody in the organization that is sharing IP overseas.
Wow.
To her native land.
Now,
So
it was inside.
Yeah.
Wow. Yep. Wow. So quick question on this, Frank. You mentioned ERP. Are they a manufacturing organization? Do they do manufacturing?
Yep.
Okay. And are they in the defense industrial base?
There's maybe 1% of their business that is.
Okay.
They're heavy utilities. So loosely.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough. Grid. Okay. Yeah. Really interesting. So
we presented additional data that they requested, but did it on a holistic approach, not targeting that user, so that they could openly question as opposed to witch hunt, and just have kind of left it in their hands. They want to watch and see more, but it was a really easy sell for us to get a long-term engagement with them.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so SaaS Alerts was instrumental in that.
Yeah. Yep.
Fantastic.
It looks like I'm in witness protection. Sorry, it's so dark.
Well,
or maybe you're welcome.
I was going to say, you don't have any balloons over your place right now, do you, after finding that?
No, but they did send 2 feet of snow. So, I mean, there's that.
That's a very, very cool story. Thank you.
We wouldn't have found it if it weren't for you guys. So love the product. Really glad you're in our toolbox.
That's awesome. Will you deploy it more ubiquitously as a result? Like,
yeah, that's kind of it's a hell of an opening salvo. Say, hey, we uncovered a spy ring in nowhere, Wisconsin.
Well,
large organization.
What a great story, though. Especially, do you have other manufacturing clients? Just curious.
Yeah, we've got them all over the U.S.
Any in the DIB?
What's that?
Any in the defense industrial base? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, one in particular that I'd helped with an ITAR journey several years ago when they got acquired.
I mean,
we're still in a talking phase for that.
Yeah, I mean, what a great, anonymous even case study or great story, because people buy based on emotion and stories, right? Yep. So this is a great insight. We talked about commercial insight. This is a great one, especially if you're in manufacturing.
Yep.
And like you said, tangentially, utilities, anything that, would be considered by CISA, critical infrastructure.
And it is, and it's some of the info shared was directly related to utilities
Was the
things they
FBI
might-
or any authorities, did they pull them in yet?
I checked with them yesterday and asked if they'd gone a step further, and they said they hadn't yet. They're still waiting to see. So it's in their court. We're probably going to eliminate. They had a lot of anonymous links generating going on too. File, add, delete that was caught. So we're going to button up the perimeter a bit and see if we can't flush her out, I guess.
Got it. I am curious, and Chip, I'm going to ask you this while I ask Frank this, but like ERP, my ears went right up. I spent some time in that industry where, you know, back in the day, I'll date myself. It used to be Great Plains before Microsoft bought it. That's how where I used to go to Fargo for their events in the late 90s. But first to you, Frank, did you find any this is phenomenal to me that most of the ERP vendors, you have an implementer that has unfederated access into it for financials, bank accounts, etc. As they're configuring, as they're setting it up, as they're maintaining maintenance on ERP, because there's obviously a very sophisticated systems, or can be very sophisticated systems.
Can be, yeah.
Did you find any of that? And the question to you and Chip, any thoughts on logs or things like that, you know, if any type of Microsoft authentication is to that you might be able to, I don't know. I know I'm probably stretching it here, but to you, Frank, first, does that make any sense? My question?
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to the point of fixing the ERP issues.
Oh, wow.
We just hit the initial engagement with just the periphery. Let's see how you're doing. Even with Arctic Wolf, they still had this bleed out. Can I say Arctic Wolf? Too late.
Wow.
Yeah, they had this bleed out and wouldn't have known because nobody's monitoring those logs.
Michelle, are you capturing this as a potential use case? I mean, a case study. This is phenomenal. When you
Jonathan and I are in Slack right now typing away. Yeah.
I'm writing one up for our clients or potential, just as a hey.
Yeah,
and everybody
talk
listening,
about permission and stuff like that.
I mean, everybody listening should adopt this as a story, you know, because again, that's what sells. And you know, again, we're going to have a gentleman on next week, George Kappas, who's going to be like an MSP spotlight, who found, you know, he deployed SaaS Alerts in some clients and they, you know, stopped immediately. 2 weeks, sorry, right? Because I write a boom. But my point is they just decided, like, he's like, you know, one of these guys, like, it's 70 cents. Why am I going to not deploy it everywhere?
Yep.
But did you have that? Are you guys kind of starting to see it that way, Frank? That, you know, we'll recoup it maybe, you know, if we're not going to upsell them today, we'll recoup it upon contract renewal. We don't care,
Yep.
right?
Yep. And I think the price point we went with was $8 a month per user.
Oh, well, that's not too much of a markup, is it?
No, it's not terrible, and it's not. I mean, depends who you ask, I guess. But
No, I'm kidding. It's great. 70 cents.
I really wish my bandwidth were better and we're on camera right now because my jaw just hit the floor.
You like that markup, Chip? That would have been better. Did you get that kind of markup with Domino's?
No. Although that was
Coach, I'll get you that $8.
Yeah, I think your pizzas would have been $100 a piece, wouldn't they have been?
I told them $10 a user per month if they just wanted a year, but they like 3-year deals, thankfully.
That's awesome.
So we discounted it to $8.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
There you go, guys. Everybody on the call, you have a new standard for price point.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that. And what I love about it too is and again, this is our prediction where this is all headed. Sorry, I got off on a tangent. I promise I'll bring it back and we'll show you some stuff here. Yeah, I agree. Congrats, Frank. Like, if you think about it, that's like above like EDR price point. But when you start to look at well, I'm just going to bring it up right now and we'll come back to the questions. I'm just too excited to show. I'm going to show this to you this because I want to bring in Chip here to talk through this. But when you think about where the impact of SaaS applications, specifically O365, M365, let me go back to my sharing. What happened there? Can you guys see that?
Yeah, we can, Andrew.
Yeah, but like when you start to think about really what's possible with this platform and the margin capability, but more so the protective capabilities of this. I love that story, Frank. Thank you for that. Any others, by the way? I put this up because we're going to talk a little about this before the end of the call, because I wanted to, talk about, can reporting make a difference? That was really the intent today. But does anybody have any other things they want to share? Great one so far from Eric, Bob, and Frank.
Yeah, I'll follow up behind that.
Awesome. Go ahead.
It was Russia, and it was I'm just kidding. I chose the to validate the expense, whatever that option was. It's not that I'm literally validating it, but my clients, even though they're CPAs and attorneys, they're still newer to having this level of security. So showing them relevant reports like SaaS, like we're places and other places of the world that try to enter their little area. I use it for educational and peace of mind. So in that respect, it's validating the expense. So it's not that I'm showing, I don't have the luxury of expanding upon a baseline of knowledge. I'm creating a baseline. So it helps visualize the baseline. This is why we did this. This is easy to read. And you'll want to take 5 minutes and listen to this, not on a quarterly meeting, but on a monthly. And so I just figured I would say something because I'm the other side of the spectrum.
Sure. No, it's great, Scott. So real quick here, I want to spend a few minutes before the end on this, because before I go into the why behind this, I want to explain it first. First, are you guys familiar to a degree with the term kill chain, and that this is Lockheed Martin's relative? So this is where, Lockheed Martin's relative to MITRE attack, right? This is how Lockheed sees the world, and they call it kill chain. And I found this graphic, and Michelle was kind enough to repurpose it into a SaaS Alerts fashion. So I'm wondering, Chip, can you kind of walk us through the kill chain and what things SaaS Alerts does, actually detect and show? And as you guys are listening to this, of the possibilities and the power of this tool, I'm wondering your perspective, like if you had SaaS Alerts in essence, and Chip's going to shoot me when I say this, but in essence, pump out a report that is in the kill chain fashion, where you could show a person like, look, here it's coming right at you. And by the way, here at the end happen to be your mission critical applications that they're heading towards in lateral movement. This, I want you to think about this as he talks about how could that impact you, and would it be, positive, would you guys think that'd be cool? So Chip, do you mind kind of just walking us through the kill chain a little bit?
No, not at all. And Andy, I do see your hand up. You want to jump in first, Andy, with a comment on the previous elements? But
yeah.
Just make sure you leave us time.
Plenty of time. This is just a quick question. And I think it'd be helpful to MSPs like me taking some of these stories and putting them into a SaaS Alerts case study that we could begin to talk to with other customers, saying, you may not have experienced this, but my awareness of some of the discoveries that are being made adds value to the presentation, even if I'm not personally experiencing it. And to have some of this created as a reference document would be awesome.
Appreciate that. I'm sure that Michelle already has her wheel spinning, Michelle and Jonathan on our team. So, and before I dive into the this graphic a little bit and just how it relates to SaaS Alerts. I want to make one final comment about the whole reporting piece. I mean, the incident that Frank shared, I think, is one that was discovered through real-time alerting, which is definitely different than reporting. I mean, you know, in our product, we've actually separated those two things out into different user interfaces, and it wasn't a random decision. The SaaS cyber assessment, that one report that we recommend that everyone sends to their customers, you know, sort of monthly or quarterly. Reporting is very, very different than real-time alerting. Reporting is there to raise awareness and to try and get people to change behavior through them noticing differences in a trend over a longer period of time. So, you know, our goal there, and I hope that it is useful for you guys, and we love suggestions on how to improve it, is, you know, that's why we call out the top 10 actors in any organization so that you can see, hey, wait a minute, Andrew Morgan has never appeared on this list before. Why did he share, you know, his account share 6,000 files last month, or whatever report period you're reporting in? You know, we've tried to make that so it's really easily digestible by the co-managed IT on the other side, or more likely by the executives that you're reviewing with. So I'll just leave that as a final comment on reporting versus real-time alerting. So the cloud security kill chain, what we did here, Andrew found a graphic that was somewhat different than this when I saw it. So you guys have really reworked this and said, hey, you know, how does this apply to SaaS Alerts? And if you look across the top line explanation of the graphic, where you'll see right underneath the title, Cloud Security Kill Chain, the very first element of this is the profile cloud services misconfiguration. What's open to the public. So obviously, you know, in SaaS Alerts case, we're primarily focused on the configuration elements around MFA and around how files are shared, whether anonymous file sharing is permitted. In this particular presentation of a kill chain, there's a weaponized section here, which really focuses on things that SaaS Alerts does not focus on. It's really platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, so there's no direct correlation to what we would do. The next piece, though, phishing, SaaS Cloud, cloud script file shares. I'm sure you guys have all seen phishing alerts. Well, maybe you haven't, because frankly, I never see them other than our training ones. But phishing alerts, and then obviously constant alerting on file share visibility. That's a big part of what this product does. And oddly enough, I think almost by accident, that's become kind of the focus of this, you know, of this call, is the whole cloud sharing side. Exploit underway, exploits themselves. Again, you know, we're really looking at account activity usage, where it's coming from, time of day, how it's being used, all of those elements of account behavior analysis, you know, fall squarely into the product. The cloud payloads, white labeling domains. Obviously, we pay a ton of attention to geolocation and whitelisting location analysis and where people are using the access from. On callbacks, event capture and alerting, on OAuth for third-party SaaS apps. This one always seems to generate some questions and controversy, particularly among new partners. They don't really understand necessarily the purpose of this. This corresponds, you know, this data falls out in our SASE report that we produce every year. March, we'll be producing the report for the 2022 data. And the amount of third-party applications that are used, what most of us in the business call shadow IT, is absolutely gigantic. And again, you know, we try to make a focus on calling those out so that you can bring that awareness to your customer of, hey, this is all the stuff that's going on in your organization. And then lastly, the data exfiltration piece. I mean, Frank's story here today certainly highlights and you know, puts a big dotted I on top of this one. That for me, this is the most important thing that SaaS Alerts does, is we give partners the ability to provide information to their customers about how the data is being used. In the end, that's the only thing that matters about security. Like, if you think of it, in a SaaS setting, where you're not protecting end user devices or endpoints or physical infrastructure, which is where we are with this product. That's really the key driver behind the entire product. It's why it's there, to make sure that you catch in real time when data is being used improperly, but also you provide reporting to your customers, even though that can be really, really boring. Like, nobody wants to necessarily look at a long list of every externally shared file. But if you can train your customers that that's important for them to do, they're going to begin to notice things that you can't as a partner. You're not inside their business day to day, so you don't know, necessarily who should be sharing what or what file should be moving around. But they know. You can bet when you put this kind of stuff in front of a, the controller or an internal security manager, if they have one, they'll notice the things that are amiss when they're looking at the reporting, especially on the file stuff.
That was awesome, Chip. As you told, you're a great storyteller, and as you shared kind of the kill chain, it just made me think about, like, it'd be so cool to do a webinar on this. I know we're going to do a great webinar at the end of the month with you and the former head of identity for HP, which is going to be awesome. But I think this would be a great one where MSPs at SaaS Alerts could bring customers, and prospects to listen into a webinar on, case studies of how the kill chain works and ultimately how it impacts a business. With just a minute or so left here, I was just curious, what do you guys think of this? Is this when you look at this document or this graphic, what do you think? Useful? Do you think you could use it to help articulate a story when you see information, when you're sitting down in those VCIO reviews, etc.? Anybody? Oh, I hear Scott or see Scott's thumb. How about you, Eric? Anything, because you do these reviews with your VCIOs, helpful?
Yeah, I mean, after this conversation, I'm definitely going to standardize a VCIO report generated for every meeting to just shine a light on what's going on for the holdouts that aren't committing to some sort of security posture.
Yeah. It's almost like and I think there's like the 30-day where it's not even costing you guys anything. So, like, even to pull your VCIO reports together, that could easily upsell them through the SaaS Alerts. Might be an option for you.
Yeah, it's not even the upsell opportunity. It's the risk mitigation on our end too, and what a disaster it is for our organization if there is something going on.
Fair enough. Very fair. I didn't want to use the FUD part on you. Any other comments on the graphic? Helpful? Would you use it? All right. I think being at the top of the hour is, I'll call it there. I don't know if there's a bunch of message. Oh, there we go. Very useful. Very definitely. Okay. See it now. All right. Well, I know we're at the top of the hour. Michelle, that was awesome. Chip, thank you as always. And everybody, thank you for joining. Michelle, are we off next week because me and Jim are out?
I'm hoping, I haven't talked to Chip, I'm hoping Jim has, about maybe Chip and Leron running the show with
okay.
help.
Perfect.
So we're working on it.
Yep.
Okay, if you guys, I just make sure you're around. Yeah, I'm on vacation. These guys are right at boom. So
yeah, I think we're out next week, Andrew, because while these guys are on vacation and you're at Right at Boom, I'm going to be bouncing around the slopes of Alta. So
it's just so you know, it's Alta, Chip. They will definitely correct you.
Okay. I haven't skied there yet, so.
Oh, you'll love it. No snowboarders. And yeah, it's a phenomenal place. Stop by Snowbird if you have time. I like it better. But you're gonna have a blast.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. One of the few places out west I haven't skied, so it's been a bucket list.
Incredible skiing in Utah. I'll send you an email and maybe we can connect before you leave. All right, everybody.
So we'll CBD. We'll probably
we'll
let you know.
We'll see you back in 2 weeks, and we're gonna have an MSP showcase, when I say showcase, but case study. of an organization that is using it ubiquitously and what their experience was and how they've grown their MSP. So until then, everybody have an awesome week and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye, guys.